Everyone is voting for Jack, 'cause he's got what all the rest lack. Everyone wants to back Jack. Jack is on the right track.
John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States. From January of 1961 to the time of his assassination in November of 1963, JFK was a young, fresh leader for the people, inspiring Americans to take on new challenges that would lead the nation back to greatness. He called the set of challenges the New Frontier.
Today our concern must be with that future. For the world is changing, the old era is ending, the old ways will not do. Here at home the future is equally revolutionary. The New Deal and the Fair Deal were bold measures for their generation. But now this is a new generation. It is time, in short, for a new generation of leadership. Some would say that those struggles are all over, that all the horizons have been explored, that all the battles have been won, that there is no longer an American frontier. But I trust that no one in this session would agree with that sentiment. For the problems are not all solved, and the battles are not all won. And we stand today on the edge of a new frontier, the frontier of the 1960s. The frontier of unknown opportunities and perils, the frontier of unfilled hopes and unfilled threats. Woodrow Wilson's New Freedom promised our nation a new political and economic framework. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal promised security and succor to those in need. But the new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises. It is a set of challenges. It sums up not what I intend to offer to the American people, but what I intend to ask of them. It appeals to their pride. It appeals to our pride, not our security. It holds out the promise of more sacrifice instead of more security. The new frontier is here, whether we seek it or not. Beyond that frontier are uncharted areas of science and space, unsolved problems of peace and war, unconquered province of ignorance and prejudice, unanswered questions of poverty and surplus. It would be easier to shrink from that new frontier, to look to the safe mediocrity of the past, to be lulled by good intentions and high rhetoric, and those who prefer that course should not vote for me or the Democratic Party. But I believe that the times require imagination and courage and perseverance. I'm asking each of you to be pioneers towards that new frontier. My call is to the young in heart, regardless of age, to the stout in spirit, regardless of party, to all who respond to the scriptural call, be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither be dismayed.
The New Frontier had a variety of objectives. Some of the major goals of this new frontier included the creation of a volunteer Peace Corps to help out developing nations, the raising of Social Security benefits, minimum wage and those covered by it, providing Medicare, federal aid to education, creating a federal Department of Urban Affairs, and giving greater powers to the government to deal with economic recessions. Specifically, JFK's New Frontier had the greatest impact on the nation through economic improvements, safety net programs, and the space race. In terms of the economy, there were plans to reform unemployment benefits and improve the relief being offered to various demographics, such as children and farmers. Under the Fair Labor Standards Amendment, the minimum wage was raised from $1.10 to $1.25, affecting 2.5 million workers. The Fair Labor Standards Act was extended to cover 5 million more workers, especially those working in large stores and the retail and service industries. In addition, the 3.5 million lowest paid men, women, and their families would be covered, allowing them to enjoy a higher standard of living. Later, in 1962, the Trade Expansion Act reduced American tariffs, hoping to encourage international trade. Of course, another purpose of the Trade Expansion Act was to stop the spread of communism. Countries that were easily able to trade with democratic nations such as the United States would find it easier to not succumb to communism. Combined with the federal highway building program, low interest rates on housing, and government programs aimed at reviving consumer demand, economic recovery was expected to start within the next few years. JFK also contributed greatly to improvements upon safety net programs. In 1961, the Social Security amendments allowed male workers to retire at age 62, increased the minimum benefits of Social Security, and increased the benefits being paid to widows, widowers, or surviving dependent parents. For those who weren't retiring, programs such as the Food Stamps program were started. Food stamps were meant to give low-income families the chance to afford food, and for the first time it was a national objective not to find a use for surplus food, but to ensure that people were eating healthy. Public welfare laws were revised to emphasize rehabilitation instead of relief, something which can be seen in the Community Mental Health Act of 1963. Using federal grants, public or nonprofit community mental health centers providing inpatient, outpatient, partial hospitalization, emergency care, and consultation or education services were built. People with mental illnesses were able to become a part of their community instead of being kept in a hospital or institution. Doing this has the effect of helping to erase the stigma on mental illnesses and is a step for the idea of equality that allows America to be great. As these improvements to domestic America went on, America would have to improve itself on another front, space. Due to the Cold War, America was engaged in a competition with the Soviet Union on several fronts, from the arms race to the space race.
Earth satellites in the world have now been created. This first satellite was today successfully launched in the US.
This beep, 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 what is it? Sputnik. Sputnik is around the globe. Who did it? We did it. The Soviet Union. First in the space.
The Soviets were also the first to launch living animals into space, and then the first man, and with this America was falling farther behind. In order to defend American pride, Kennedy had millions of dollars invested in the space program. Of course, this was not the only reason Kennedy grabbed the opportunity to have America focus on space. The recent failure at the Bay of Pigs in Cuba was something that Americans needed to forget about. But what would America do? The Soviets had already claimed many firsts in space. President Kennedy answered them.
The dramatic achievements in space which occurred in recent weeks should have made clear to us all, as did the Sputnik in 1957, the impact of this adventure on the minds of men everywhere who are attempting to make a determination of which road they should take. Since early in my term, our efforts in space have been under review. With the advice of the Vice President, who is Chairman of the National Space Council, we have examined where we are strong and where we are not, where we may succeed and where we may not. Now it is time to take longer strides, time for a great new American enterprise, time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth. I believe we possess all the resources and talents necessary. I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I have earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. But in my judgment, this is a most serious time in the life of our country and in the life of freedom around the globe, and it is the obligation, I believe, of the President of the United States to at least make his recommendations to the members of the Congress so that they can reach their own conclusions with that judgment before them. You must decide yourselves as I have decided, and I am confident that whether you finally decide in the way that I have decided or not, that your judgment, as my judgment, is reached on what is in the best interests of our country.
And so the question remains, how does all of this remain relevant today? Following the space race, NASA and the space program were used to maintain relations between the U.S. and Russia. NASA described its relationship with Russia as normal, and that their involvement with Russia was largely immune to geopolitical ups and downs between Washington and Moscow. There have even been plans for a joint U.S.-Russian space mission to foster good international relations, and NASA remains relevant in other ways as well.
I'm astronaut Ron Guerin, and I recently returned from a half year in space on board the International Space Station. But today I'm not speaking to you as a NASA astronaut. Today I'm speaking to you as a fellow citizen of Earth. When we look at the Earth from space, we are really faced with a sobering contradiction. On the one hand, we can clearly see the indescribable beauty of the planet that we've been given. On the other hand, are the unfortunate realities of life on our beautiful planet for a significant portion of its inhabitants. It saddens me and compels me to action to think that we have the technology, we have the resources to solve many, if not all, of the problems facing our planet. Yet nearly 1 billion people don't have access to clean water, countless go to bed hungry every night, and many die from completely curable and preventable diseases. We live in a world where the possibilities are only limited by our imagination and our will to act. It is within our power to reduce or eliminate the suffering and the poverty that exists on our planet. The answer is quite simple. Just do something. The problems facing our world are really about how humanity commits on a person-to-person basis to accomplish that. In other words, how do people, individual people, make a commitment, no matter how big or how small, a commitment to make a positive difference in the world. The good news is there's about 20 million organizations around the world that are committed to making a difference, or that are committed to improving life on Earth. The bad news is, for the most part, these organizations are not working together in a unified, coordinated manner. This leads to duplication of efforts and the loss of effectiveness and a loss of overall impact that these organizations could otherwise make. So the challenge for Rock: what better way to hack for humanity than to create a platform for all people and all organizations to work together, to collaboratively work together to make the world a better place. We need help with building collaborative platforms, data visualizations, and social networking tools that can be used not only to solve the challenges facing our planet, but also to measure progress towards those challenges, towards the solutions of those challenges, including those spelled out by the UN in the Millennium Development Goals. The ultimate goal in this, the ultimate goal of this challenge, is to reduce that sobering contradiction that we see when we look at the Earth, by making the Earth not only visibly beautiful, but one where life is beautiful for all. So we're looking forward to your help. For more information on this challenge, go to rock.org, and we're looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with towards this. It's a great way to make a difference.
Many of the safety net benefits that Kennedy implemented during his presidency are still being used or were changed for use today. For example, after the Community Mental Health Act was passed, more mental health legislation was passed as well, and in 2013 there was a mental health conference hosted in the White House, in hopes that by seeing the president's concern, more people would take action as well. President Kennedy would agree with that sentiment of President Obama. The actions he took as president still affect the way people are prevented from falling through the cracks, and for many years after investing millions of dollars in it, NASA continued to learn more about space, making technological innovations along the way. As Kennedy puts it,
a whole world looks to see what we shall do. And we cannot fail that trust, and we cannot fail to try.